I'm Clara Bennett, and at 30, I thought I had it all figured out. I built my tech company from nothing, no trust fund, no family connections, just grit, sleepless nights, and way too much instant ramen. But love, that part caught me off guard. When Julian Sterling proposed with his family's heirloom emerald ring, I thought I was stepping into a fairy tale. Instead, I walked straight into a war zone, where love came with a price tag, and dignity was negotiable. His mother made sure I understood that. The moment she threw a glass of red wine in my face and demanded a $200,000 dowry. That was the night I realized I wasn't just fighting for love, I was fighting for my worth. Before I share exactly how I turned their power games upside down, tell me where you're listening from. And if you've ever stood up to people who thought money gave them all the power, hit like and subscribe. This story's for you. 5 years ago, I built my tech company from the ground up. I mean, literally. I started it in a tiny apartment in Detroit. I grew up in a perfectly average neighborhood there. My parents were both teachers. My dad taught history at the local high school, and my mom was an elementary school librarian. They weren't rich, not by a long shot, but they instilled in me something far more valuable: the grit of hard work and the fire of determination. We always had enough, and we had each other. I managed to pay my way through the State University of Michigan with a combination of scholarships and working every part-time job imaginable. I graduated with degrees in computer science and business, ready to take on the world. That first year of my company, brutal, absolutely brutal. I'm talking 18-hour days fueled by instant ramen noodles, and rejection after rejection. But I had developed something unique, a software platform that really streamlined supply chain management for mid-sized companies. Slowly, painstakingly, clients started to notice. By year 3, we had 20 employees. By year 5, we'd expanded to 3 offices across the country, with over 100 staff members. It felt like a dream. Then I met Julian. He was 30, a financial analyst from an incredibly wealthy family based in New York City. We met at a financial technology conference in Boston. I was presenting our latest software solution, and he approached me afterwards. He wasn't just another networking handshake. He had genuinely thoughtful questions about scalability and market penetration. He was tall, with kind eyes, and a smile that seemed to light up the room. We exchanged business cards, and the very next day, he called to ask me to dinner. Our connection was immediate, almost electric. He was intelligent, ambitious, and he genuinely seemed impressed by what I had built. Over the next year and a half, our relationship just blossomed. He was incredibly supportive of my career, bringing me coffee during those late nights at the office, celebrating every company milestone with genuine enthusiasm. When he proposed 3 months ago, with this absolutely stunning vintage emerald ring, he said it was a family heirloom. I didn't hesitate. I said yes. It felt right. It felt like the start of everything good. It was only after our engagement that Julian started mentioning his family more frequently. He described his father, Arthur, as old school but fair, and his mother, Eleanor, particular about certain things. When I pressed for more details, he'd just shrug and say, "Mom's just traditional. She'll love you when she gets to know you." Looking back, I should have paid more attention to those subtle warnings, those little shrugs that brushed away my perfectly normal questions. The Sterling family, I quickly learned, wasn't just wealthy. They were old money wealthy, with deep connections throughout the East Coast business world. Arthur had inherited and significantly expanded a manufacturing company called Sterling Enterprises, which produced specialized components for the aerospace industry. Their social circle was a who's who of power: senators, CEOs, even occasionally minor European royalty. The irony of all this was almost laughable, though I certainly wasn't laughing at the time. 6 months before Julian proposed, my company had actually secured a contract with Sterling Enterprises. One of their divisions needed our software to modernize their inventory management system. That contract represented about 20% of our annual revenue. Significant, yes, but not make or break for my company. I had only ever dealt with their procurement team and the IT department, never directly with the Sterling family. Until now. As the dinner with Julian's parents approached, I found myself increasingly nervous. I spent hours researching proper etiquette for dining with the upper class. I bought a new dress, conservative but elegant, a deep navy blue with a modest neckline. I even practiced small talk topics that seemed appropriate: art, travel, philanthropy. "You're overthinking this, Clara," Julian said the evening before the dinner, squeezing my hand. "Just be yourself. They'll see what I see in you." Easy for him to say. The day of the dinner, Julian picked me up in his sleek black sedan. As we drove through increasingly exclusive neighborhoods, my stomach tightened into a knot. The Sterling estate was at the end of a long private drive, lined with perfectly manicured trees that looked like they belonged in a painting. The house itself was a sprawling Georgian mansion, all columns and immaculate gardens. "You didn't tell me you grew up in a literal palace," I whispered as we approached the massive front door. Julian squeezed my hand again. "It's just a house." But it wasn't just a house. It was a statement. A monument to generational wealth, to a level of privilege I had never experienced. As the massive door swung open, I took a deep breath and stepped into Julian's world. A uniformed housekeeper greeted us, taking our coats with practiced ease. The foyer alone was larger than my first apartment, with gleaming marble floors and a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than my entire company's initial startup capital. Family portraits lined the walls, generations of Sterlings looking down with the same confident, almost imperious expression Julian himself often wore. Eleanor Sterling appeared from a side room. She was elegant in a tailored black dress, a pearl necklace gleaming against her skin. She looked younger than her late 50s, with Julian's same hazel eyes, and a practiced smile that didn't quite reach them. "Julian, darling," she said, air-kissing both his cheeks. Then she turned to me, her eyes sweeping from my hair to my shoes in a quick, dismissive assessment. "And you must be Clara." Her handshake was brief, her fingers barely touching mine. "How lovely to finally meet you. Julian has told us so little about you." The emphasis on little wasn't subtle, it was a verbal jab. Before I could respond, Arthur Sterling entered. He was tall and distinguished, with silver hair, and he offered a noticeably warmer greeting. "Welcome to our home, Clara. Julian says you're quite the entrepreneur." "Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to meet you both." We moved to a formal sitting room where a staff member served champagne. I perched on the edge of an antique sofa, acutely aware of Eleanor's scrutiny. "So, Clara," Eleanor began, her voice smooth but probing. "Tell us about your family. What does your father do?" "My father was a high school history teacher. He's retired now." "A teacher?" She said it like someone might say an exotic dancer. "And your mother?" "Elementary school librarian. She passed away 3 years ago." "I'm sorry to hear that," Arthur said genuinely. Eleanor merely nodded, taking a sip of champagne. "No family money then? No trust fund or inheritance?" "Mom," Julian interjected, but his tone was more amused than reproachful. "It's a reasonable question, darling. I'm just getting to know your friend." "Fiancé," I corrected gently. "And no trust fund. I built my company from the ground up." "Yes, Julian mentioned you have some sort of computer business. Tech solutions?" Eleanor sounded bored. "Actually, we develop specialized software for supply chain management. In fact, my company has been working with Sterling Enterprises for the past 6 months." This news seemed to genuinely surprise Eleanor. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "I wasn't aware of that." "The new inventory system that's being implemented, that's our platform," I explained, relieved to move to more comfortable territory. "I see. Well, I leave those details to our managers." Just then, the housekeeper announced dinner, and we moved to a formal dining room dominated by a mahogany table set with fine china and crystal. Each place setting had 3 forks, 2 spoons, and multiple glasses. I was grateful for my etiquette research. As the first course was served, some kind of cold soup I didn't recognize, Eleanor continued her interrogation. "Where did you attend school, Clara?" "State University of Michigan. I had a scholarship." "Not Columbia," she raised an eyebrow. "The Sterlings have attended Columbia for 4 generations." "Different paths to success, dear," Arthur interjected, looking at me. "Clara's company is quite innovative from what I've heard." I smiled gratefully at him. "Thank you. We're particularly proud of our new predictive analytics module." "That, Clara," Eleanor interrupted. "You're using your dessert spoon for the soup." I wasn't, but I switched spoons anyway, feeling my face flush. Throughout the appetizer and main course, Eleanor found fault with everything: my posture, my voice, a bit loud for dinner conversation. Even the way I complimented their home, grateful rather than observant. Each criticism was delivered with a tight, polite smile. as if she were doing me a favor. When I attempted to discuss the successful partnership between our companies, Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. Business talk is so tedious at dinner, she said. Tell me, Clara, have you given any thought to children? The Sterling line is quite important. We haven't discussed timing yet, I said carefully. I'd like to ensure my company is stable first. Eleanor's face hardened. A mother's primary responsibility is to her children, not her hobby. My company isn't a hobby. We employ over 100 people. And 100 people dependent on you, she interrupted. How will you possibly manage that and properly raise a Sterling? I looked to Julian for support, but he was suddenly very interested in his roast beef. By the time dessert arrived, the tension was palpable. I had barely touched my food. My appetite destroyed by anxiety. Eleanor had moved on to questioning my lack of social connections. No country club membership, not even a charity board position. When I decided to make one last attempt at civility, I said, Mrs. Sterling, I understand you chair the hospital foundation. That's admirable work. For a moment, she seemed almost pleased. Yes, philanthropy is a Sterling tradition. Perhaps someday you might be equipped to participate. Actually, my company has a foundation that provides tech education for underprivileged youth. We've helped over 50 students attend college so far. How quaint, she took a sip of wine, then looked directly at me. Let's be frank, Clara. You seem enterprising, but the Sterling family has certain standards. Julian holds a position in society that requires a suitable partner. I believe I am suitable, I said quietly. Do you? Without warning, she flung the contents of her wine glass directly into my face. The red liquid splashed across my cheeks and dripped onto my new navy dress. I gasped, too shocked to speak. That's to disinfect a poor girl, she said calmly. If you want to marry my son, you'll need to contribute a $200,000 dowry to the Sterling Family Trust. Consider it an entrance fee. I sat frozen, wine dripping down my face, unable to believe what had just happened. Even more unbelievable was Julian's reaction. He laughed. He actually laughed. Mom has her ways, he said with a chuckle, handing me his napkin. She did the same thing to my cousin's wife. Arthur looked incredibly uncomfortable but remained silent. It's a family tradition, Eleanor explained, as if throwing wine at dinner guests was perfectly normal. The Sterling family doesn't marry down without compensation. Your business may be successful now, but startups are notoriously unstable. The dowry ensures you're committed to the family, not just to Julian's trust fund. I dabbed at my face, my hands shaking. I had no idea marriage required a purchase price. Everything valuable has a cost, Eleanor replied. If you truly love Julian, this shouldn't be an issue. The remainder of the dinner passed in a blur. I barely spoke, mechanically eating tiny bites of dessert while Eleanor discussed their upcoming vacation to St. Bart's. Julian acted as if nothing unusual had happened, chatting about golf and mutual friends I'd never heard of. As we prepared to leave, I made one last attempt to salvage something from the evening. Despite our challenging introduction, Mrs. Sterling, I hope we can maintain a professional relationship. Your company's partnership is important to us. Eleanor patted my cheek condescendingly. Of course, dear. Business is business. The dowry is personal. I'll have my assistant send the account details for the transfer. I've never been so relieved to leave a house in my life. The car ride home was silent for the first 10 minutes. I stared out the window, still processing what had happened, waiting for Julian to say something, anything, to acknowledge the humiliation I just endured. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Are you going to say anything about what your mother did? Julian sighed. I told you she was particular. Particular? Julian, she threw wine in my face and demanded I pay to marry you. It's just how Mom is. She did the same thing to my sister-in-law, Lisa. Once you pay the dowry, she'll warm up to you. I stared at him in disbelief. You think I'm going to pay $200,000 to join your family? It's not a big deal. You can afford it with your company doing so well. That's not the point. It's degrading and archaic. And you laughed, Julian. You laughed when she assaulted me. Assaulted? He rolled his eyes. Don't be so dramatic. It's a family tradition. If you want to be part of this family, you need to respect our ways. That night was our first real argument. What disturbed me most wasn't Eleanor's behavior. It was Julian's. He didn't defend me, didn't apologize for his mother, and seemed genuinely perplexed by my upset. When we reached my apartment, I told him I needed space to think. Don't overthink this, Clara, he said, kissing my forehead. Just pay the dowry and we can move past it. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying the dinner in my mind, wondering if I had somehow misunderstood or overreacted. By morning, I had convinced myself that perhaps this was just an unusual custom I wasn't familiar with, a test of some kind. Then my phone rang. It was Eleanor. "Clara, dear, I'm following up about our discussion last night. My assistant will send the wire transfer details today. We expect the dowry to be paid within 30 days, or we'll have to reconsider Julian's engagement." She spoke as if we were discussing a routine business transaction, not the purchase of her son. "Mrs. Sterling, I'm not comfortable with—" "Also," she interrupted, "I've scheduled a meeting with your team next week. There are some adjustments we'd like to make to the software implementation. Nothing major, just a few customizations." Before I could respond, she hung up. The meeting she referenced took place at my company's headquarters. Eleanor arrived with Sterling Enterprises' CIO and 2 IT managers. For 2 hours, she was the model of professionalism. No mention of the dinner disaster, no personal comments at all. But those few customizations turned out to be major system overhauls that weren't in our contract and would cost thousands of extra development hours. When I tried to explain this, Eleanor smiled coldly. "I'm sure you can accommodate us, given our personal connection. Julian would be disappointed if his fiancé couldn't manage such a simple request." The threat was clear: pay the dowry and do the extra work, or lose both the relationship and the contract. That evening, Julian called. "Mom said the meeting went well. Did she mention she's asking for changes that would cost my company nearly $100,000 in uncompensated work?" "I'm sure she's just testing your commitment," he paused. "Have you transferred the dowry yet?" "Julian, we need to talk about this. It doesn't bother you that your mother is essentially holding our relationship hostage?" "Don't be so American about it," he said, his tone patronizing. "In many cultures, dowries are normal. Just pay it, Clara, for us." The next day, I met my best friend Brenda for lunch and told her everything. "That's insane," she said, eyes wide. "You're not actually considering paying, are you?" "I don't know. I love Julian, but this feels wrong." Brenda frowned. "You know my cousin works for that law firm that represents a lot of New York's elite, right? Let me ask her if she's heard of the Sterlings doing this before." 2 days later, Brenda called with disturbing news. The dowry tradition wasn't just for Julian's sister-in-law, Lisa. According to her cousin, the Sterlings had demanded similar payments from multiple people who married into the family. More concerning, those who paid didn't suddenly become accepted. The demands just changed form. "Julian's last fiancé paid," Brenda said. "Her name was Simone. Then they demanded she quit her job because Sterling women don't work. When she refused, Julian broke it off." I felt sick. Why would he do this? Some families see marriage as a business transaction, not a love match. The Sterlings clearly think their name has monetary value. I spent the next week researching the family's pattern. Through industry contacts and social media, I connected with Julian's ex-fiancée, Simone. What she told me confirmed my worst fears. "After I paid," she said, her voice hollow, "they controlled everything: where we lived, who we socialized with, even when we would have children. When I resisted, Eleanor threatened to have my father's contracting business blacklisted. And Julian always sided with her. Meanwhile, the business relationship was deteriorating rapidly. Eleanor began calling daily with new demands and complaints. She criticized my staff in meetings, repeatedly mentioned that Sterling Enterprises could find another vendor, and made implementation of our software increasingly difficult. The pressure from Julian intensified as well. What started as gentle reminders about the dowry became daily texts and calls. "Mom's getting impatient, Clara. This is embarrassing for me. If you really loved me, this wouldn't be an issue." When I expressed concerns about his mother's business tactics, he dismissed them. "You're being paranoid. Business and personal should be separate." But they weren't separate. Not for Eleanor. She was weaponizing the business relationship to force my compliance in personal matters. And slowly, I began to see that Julian was complicit. 3 weeks after the disastrous dinner, I confronted Julian directly. "I need to know where your loyalty lies," I said. "With me, your future wife, or with your mother?" "That's not fair," he protested. "I love you, but I respect my family's traditions. Even when those traditions involve humiliating and extorting your fiancé, You're overreacting. It's just money, Clara. You have it. Why not pay? Because I won't be bought or sold. Marriage should be about love and partnership. His expression hardened. You Americans are so obsessed with romantic notions. Marriage has always been about family alliances and financial stability. My family is offering you social connections most people would kill for. The argument escalated until Julian stormed out. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text. It wasn't from Julian, but from an unknown number. The message contained screenshots of a conversation between Julian and his mother. Julian? Eleanor, she's still being difficult about the dowry. Eleanor, keep pressuring her. The business contract gives us leverage. Julian? What if she still refuses? Eleanor, then she's not sterling material. Remember your trust fund conditions. Julian, I'll bring her in line. She just needs to understand how things work. I felt physically ill. The man I loved, the man I thought respected me as an equal, had been conspiring with his mother all along. This wasn't just about a family tradition. It was about control. Later, I discovered the text had been sent by Arthur's personal assistant, who had witnessed too many similar scenarios and felt compelled to warn me. 2 days later, Eleanor called with an invitation, or rather, a summons. We're having a family dinner this Saturday to discuss the situation. The entire family will be present. We expect you to attend with a decision about the dowry. The dinner was as intimidating as intended. Julian's brother Michael and his wife Lisa were there, along with his uncle David and Aunt Beatrice. All eyes were on me as Eleanor explained the situation. Clara seems reluctant to honor our family traditions, she said. I thought it might help if she heard from others who have joined our family successfully. One by one, the in-laws spoke about their dowry experiences. Lisa described it as an investment in my future. Julian's Aunt Beatrice called it the price of admission to a better life. His uncle's wife, Carol, emphasized how it proved her commitment to the family values. Throughout their testimonials, I noticed something disturbing. None of them looked truly happy. Lisa barely spoke unless prompted. Carol deferred to her husband on every question. They seemed less like family members and more like employees, afraid to displease the boss. Then Arthur spoke, surprising everyone. I paid a dowry to Eleanor's family when I married her. Her family required proof of my commitment. Eleanor looked annoyed at this revelation. That was different. Your family wasn't established. The principle is the same, Arthur said, then fell silent under his wife's glare. Finally, Julian took my hand. Clara, we all want you to be part of this family, but traditions matter. It's time to decide. Are you in or out? The ultimatum hung in the air. Everyone waited for my answer. I need to use the restroom, I said, needing a moment to breathe. In the hallway, I checked my phone and found 3 urgent messages from Lena, my business partner. Clara, we're having an emergency with Sterling Industries. Eleanor called a meeting with our team this morning and threatened to terminate the contract over quality issues. She's telling other clients we're unreliable. We're already getting calls from Preston Corp asking if we're stable. What's happening? My personal crisis had officially become a business crisis. Eleanor wasn't just threatening my relationship. She was attacking my company, my employees, everything I'd built. When I returned to the dining room, I could barely maintain my composure. The conversation had moved on to wedding plans. Plans for a wedding that would apparently only happen if I paid for the privilege. The country club is booked for June, Eleanor was saying. If Clara confirms the dowry payment this week, we can secure the date. And if I don't? I asked quietly. The room fell silent. Then there won't be a wedding, Julian said firmly. I love you, Clara, but this is non-negotiable. In that moment, looking at his face, so similar to his mother's in expression and resolve, I finally saw the truth. Julian had never respected me or my accomplishments. To him, I was an acquisition, not a partner. His love was conditional, based on my compliance with his family's demands. The devastation must have shown on my face, because Arthur unexpectedly spoke up again. Perhaps we could reduce the amount, given Clara's business success. The amount is traditional, Eleanor snapped. If anything, it should be higher, given her background. I stood up. I need to go. Running away doesn't solve anything, Eleanor said dismissively. I'm not running. I'm leaving a situation that has become untenable. Julian followed me to the door. Don't do this, Clara. Think about what you're throwing away. I am, I said. And I'm wondering what I ever saw in a man who would let his mother throw wine in my face. and then demand I pay for the privilege. The next day brought more bad news. Another major client called to cancel their contract, citing concerns about our stability, concerns that had apparently originated from Eleanor Sterling. My company's reputation, built over 5 years of hard work, was being systematically dismantled by a woman who saw me as nothing more than inadequate for her son. By the end of the week, we had lost 3 clients, and our stock was beginning to drop. My dream, my employees' livelihoods, everything was suddenly at risk. The crisis had reached its peak. I had to make a decision: pay the dowry to save my relationship and possibly my business, or take a stand and risk losing everything. That weekend, I went to my father's home in Detroit, needing distance from both Julian and the business chaos. Dad listened to the whole story without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "This isn't about money," he said finally. "It's about respect. If they don't respect you now, paying won't change that." "But my company, Dad, everything I've built." "Clara, what you've built was built on your intelligence and determination, not on one client, even if it's a significant one." His confidence in me was the first step toward reclaiming my own. When I returned to New York, I booked a meeting with Evelyn, my longtime mentor and former business professor. Over coffee, I laid out the entire situation. "You faced a predator," she said bluntly. "Eleanor identified your vulnerabilities, your love for her son and your business connection, and she's exploiting them. Classic power play. How do I fight back? She has more resources, more connections." Evelyn smiled. "But you have something she doesn't expect: the ability to surprise her. Predators don't expect prey to turn and fight." With Evelyn's guidance, I began developing a strategy. First, I reconnected with Sarah, a college friend who now worked for the New York Business Journal. Without sharing details that would identify the Sterlings, I discussed the general situation. "Unfortunately, it's not uncommon," Sarah said. "Old money families often use business ties as leverage in personal matters. It's rarely reported because the victims fear retaliation." "What if someone did report it?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "It would make a compelling story about ethics in business relationships. Hypothetically speaking, of course." Next, I initiated a thorough investigation into Sterling Enterprises' business practices. If Eleanor was willing to use her company as a weapon against me, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I assigned my best analyst, Alex, to the task. 3 days later, Alex delivered his report. "There are some concerning patterns," he said. "Sterling Industries has a history of abruptly terminating contracts with companies whose executives had personal conflicts with the family. There are also several instances of questionable accounting practices and potential labor violations. This wasn't just about me. The Sterlings, particularly Eleanor, had a pattern of misusing their business power for personal vendettas. Meanwhile, I worked with our sales team to accelerate outreach to potential new clients. We focused particularly on Apex Global and Zenith Systems, 2 competitors of Sterling Enterprises who had previously expressed interest in our services. My CFO, Olivia, ran financial projections of life without the Sterling contract. It would hurt short-term, she admitted. We'd need to tighten expenses and possibly delay the new office opening, but with these new prospects, we could recover within 2 quarters. On Thursday, I called an emergency board meeting. Our 7 board members listened gravely as I explained the situation, the personal conflict with the Sterlings, the business repercussions, and my proposed strategy. "I won't pretend this isn't serious," I concluded. "Sterling Enterprises represents 20% of our current revenue. Losing them will impact us. But continuing this relationship means submitting to unethical demands and setting a dangerous precedent." To my relief, the board unanimously supported my decision to separate from Sterling Enterprises. George, our chairman, put it best: "We didn't invest in this company to watch it become a puppet of old money bullies. We invested because you, Clara, have integrity and vision." Throughout this period, Julian continued his campaign to pressure me. His texts oscillated between romantic pleas and thinly veiled threats. "I miss you. Can't we work this out? Mom says several of your clients are considering switching to competitors. I could talk to her." "Don't throw away what we have over stubborn pride. The dowry isn't just about money. It's about proving you're not just after the Sterling fortune." Each message clarified what I already knew. His loyalty would always be to his family and their twisted values, not to me or our relationship. The final piece of my strategy involved legal preparation. I met with our corporate counsel, Sophia, to review all contracts and communications with Sterling Enterprises. They've actually given us grounds for a clean break, Sophia said, reviewing Eleanor's recent emails. These new demands constitute material changes to the original agreement. And these threats about damaging your reputation with other clients? That's tortious interference. If they try to penalize you for ending the relationship, we have a solid case. By Friday, 1 week after the family dinner, I had my plan in place. I had documentation of all interactions, legal preparations for contract termination, preliminary agreements with 2 new clients, and the unwavering support of my team. That evening, I received a text from Julian. Mom's patience is running out. Last chance to make this right. Dinner at her house tomorrow to finalize everything. Be there at 7. I texted back a single word, no. Instead, I sent a formal email to Eleanor requesting a meeting at my office on Monday morning. The subject line, resolution of business relationship. Her reply came within minutes. I'll be there. Come prepared to discuss both business and personal matters. I was prepared, just not in the way she expected. Throughout the weekend, I rehearsed what I would say and how I would say it. I reviewed all documentation and confirmed our legal standing. I spoke with our major clients to reassure them of our stability. I even practiced power poses in front of my mirror, determined to project confidence, even if I didn't fully feel it. Sunday night, Julian came to my apartment unannounced. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice both pleading and condescending. Mom is willing to forgive your stubbornness if you come tomorrow with the dowry and an apology. I looked at the man I had thought I would marry and felt nothing but sadness for what could have been. I'll be there tomorrow, I said, but not for the reasons you think. As he left, I removed his engagement ring and placed it carefully in an envelope. The emerald that had once symbolized our future now represented a bullet dodged. Monday morning arrived. I wore my most powerful outfit, a tailored black suit with subtle red accents, and I prepared to face Eleanor Sterling on my terms, in my territory. The board had approved my decision. My team was behind me. My legal position was sound. For the first time since that wine had splashed across my face, I felt in control again. Eleanor Sterling arrived at my office precisely at 9:00 a.m., dressed impeccably in a designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting her way. My assistant showed her into our main conference room, where I waited alone. I had deliberately chosen the setup. No lawyers, no team members, just the 2 of us. This confrontation needed to be personal. Clara, she said, taking a seat across from me. I'm pleased you finally come to your senses. Julian will be relieved. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Sterling, I replied, keeping my tone professional, but I think you've misunderstood the purpose of this meeting. Her smile faltered slightly. Oh, I assumed we were finalizing the dowry arrangement and addressing those contract modifications. Actually, we're here to discuss the termination of our business relationship. The change in her expression was subtle but unmistakable, a flicker of surprise quickly masked by practiced composure. That would be unwise, she said. Sterling Enterprises represents a significant portion of your company's revenue. And of course, there's Julian to consider. I've considered everything very carefully, I said, opening the folder in front of me. In the past month, you've made numerous demands outside our contractual agreement, threatened my company's reputation with other clients, and attempted to use our business relationship to coerce me in personal matters. I slid several documents across the table, printouts of emails, meeting notes, and the text message exchange between her and Julian. What I initially thought was just an unpleasant personal interaction has revealed itself as a pattern of unethical business conduct. Her eyes narrowed as she glanced at the evidence. You're making a grave mistake. No, Mrs. Sterling. The mistake was thinking I needed to tolerate abuse to be successful. I've secured 2 new clients to replace Sterling Enterprises business, Apex Global and Zenith Systems. The mention of her competitors visibly rattled her. They don't have our resources or influence. Perhaps not, but they value our services on their merits, not as leverage for personal agendas. I pulled out another document. This is our formal notice of contract termination as permitted under Section 8.3 of our agreement. Your recent demands constitute material changes to the original terms. This is absurd. Our legal team will... Your legal team will advise you that fighting this would expose some concerning practices within Sterling Industries, I interrupted, placing another folder on the table. My team found several instances of questionable accounting, potential labor violations, and a pattern of contract terminations that could be construed as tortious interference. For the first time, Eleanor looked genuinely alarmed. You're investigating us. I'm protecting my company, something I should have done sooner. I'm not interested in damaging Sterling Industries, Mrs. Sterling. I simply want a clean break, both professionally and personally. At that moment, my assistant entered with a small package. Perfect timing, I said, taking it. This is for Julian. I opened the package to reveal the engagement ring, now nestled in a corporate courier envelope. I'm returning this with the same level of dignity and respect you showed me at our first dinner. Eleanor's face flushed with anger. You ungrateful— I'm not finished, I interrupted, my voice steady. I want to be absolutely clear. I'm not buying a husband, Mrs. Sterling. I'm building a life, one based on mutual respect and genuine partnership, not financial transactions disguised as tradition. I stood up, signaling that the conversation was ending. Effective immediately, my company is terminating all contracts with Sterling Industries. The transition documents are included in that folder, along with the contact information for our legal team, should you have questions about the process. Eleanor also rose, her composure cracking. You won't get away with this. Do you have any idea who we are in this community? One word from me, and doors will close for you everywhere. That might have worked in the past, I acknowledged. But times have changed. Bullying and threats leave paper trails now, and stories about powerful families using their businesses to settle personal scores make compelling headlines. You wouldn't dare. I prefer not to, I said honestly. This can end cleanly, Mrs. Sterling. You go your way, I go mine. Or you can escalate, and we can see how today's business community responds to your methods. For a long moment she stared at me, calculation visible in her eyes. Then she gathered her purse. Julian deserves better than you, she said coldly. On that we agree, I replied, but for different reasons. Security will escort you out. As she reached the door, I added, one more thing, Mrs. Sterling, that $200,000 you wanted, I'm donating it to a scholarship fund for first-generation entrepreneurs. I thought you should know. After Eleanor left, I sat alone in the conference room, my hands trembling with the aftermath of adrenaline. I had done it. Stood up to her, protected my company, and freed myself from a relationship that would have slowly crushed my spirit. The fallout was immediate but manageable. Sterling Industries issued a curt statement about differing business philosophies and began transitioning to another vendor. Several society events suddenly lost my invitations. Julian sent a final text, calling me the biggest mistake of his life. But there were unexpected positives too. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. Clara, this is Arthur Sterling. I braced myself for more threats or anger. I wanted to apologize, he said instead. What Eleanor did, what we all did, was inexcusable. I sat silent while you were humiliated, and I'm ashamed of that. His voice sounded different, older, but somehow more alive. Thank you for saying that, Mr. Sterling. Arthur, please. He paused. I've enabled Eleanor's behavior for years, watching her drive away good people who didn't meet her arbitrary standards. Seeing your courage today, it's given me some things to think about. 2 weeks later, Business News reported that Arthur Sterling had taken a leave of absence from Sterling Industries to reassess priorities. Rumor had it he had moved out of the family mansion. The industry fallout I had feared never fully materialized. Yes, a few doors closed. Companies with ties to the Sterlings suddenly became unavailable. But for every closed door, 2 more opened. My stand against the Sterlings had resonated with others who had experienced similar treatment, but lacked the means to fight back. 1 month after the confrontation, our contract with Apex Global was officially signed, a larger deal than we'd ever had with Sterling Industries. The press release included a quote from their CEO. We value partners who demonstrate integrity in both business practices and personal ethics. It was the sweetest victory of all. 6 months passed. My company not only survived the separation from Sterling Industries, but thrived. The loss of their business had forced us to diversify our client base, resulting in more stable revenue and less vulnerability to any single client's demands. We added 15 new clients, expanded to a fourth office in Seattle, and launched a new product line that was already exceeding sales projections. The quarterly report showed a 22% increase in revenue compared to the previous year. The transition hadn't been entirely smooth. We had needed to delay some projects and tighten expenses temporarily. 2 employees had left, concerned about stability, but the core team had rallied around our values, working longer hours and bringing innovative solutions to new challenges. The business relationship with the Sterlings was completely severed, but the personal fallout continued in unexpected ways. Julian attempted to reconcile several times, his approaches evolving as his mother's influence apparently waned. His first attempt came via text. "Mom was wrong, I was wrong, can we talk?" When I didn't respond, flowers arrived at my office with a note. "I miss your strength and intelligence. Dinner without my family's involvement?" Finally, he showed up at my apartment one evening, looking disheveled and humbled. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said. "I'm starting to understand how dysfunctional my family's dynamics are." Part of me wanted to believe him. The connection we'd shared had been real, at least on my side. But his betrayal had cut too deep. "I'm glad you're getting help, Julian," I told him. "But we can't go back." "What if I've changed? What if I'm breaking free from her control?" "Then do it for yourself," I replied. "Not to win me back. Real change doesn't happen in a few months, and it doesn't happen to impress someone else." As he left, I felt a weight lifting, the final remnants of what if and maybe someday that had lingered in my heart. More surprising was my developing friendship with Arthur Sterling. After leaving his wife, he had rented a modest apartment and begun reconnecting with friends Eleanor had deemed unsuitable. We occasionally met for coffee, where he shared insights from his therapy and his regrets about enabling Eleanor's behavior for decades. "I thought protecting the Sterling name meant preserving traditions," he said during one such meeting. "I never questioned whether those traditions deserved preservation." Through Arthur, I learned that my stand had created ripples throughout their social circle. Lisa, Julian's sister-in-law, had begun attending business school, something Eleanor had previously forbidden. 2 other Sterling in-laws had renegotiated their roles in family businesses, demanding respect rather than continuing as silent partners. My company received unexpected recognition for ethical business practices. The New York Business Journal, where my friend Sarah worked, published a feature on companies that maintained integrity despite pressure from larger entities. While the article never named the Sterlings, the profile of my company emphasized our commitment to valuing partnership over power imbalances. This publicity led to speaking engagements at business schools and entrepreneurship conferences, where I shared lessons about maintaining ethical boundaries between personal and professional relationships. "Success built on compromise of core values isn't success," became my signature message. It's just a prettier version of failure. Perhaps the most healing development came 9 months after the confrontation. At a technology conference in San Francisco, I met Ben, the founder of a cybersecurity firm. Our connection was immediate, intellectual, personal, and founded on mutual respect. Unlike Julian, Ben was genuinely fascinated by my business journey, asking thoughtful questions and offering insights without condescension. When I eventually shared the Sterling story, his response was refreshingly straightforward. "That's their loss, and my gain. Anyone who can't see your worth at face value doesn't deserve access to it." Our relationship developed slowly, both of us bringing lessons from past experiences. There were no demands for financial proof of commitment, no family traditions that superseded personal dignity. Just 2 equals building something meaningful together. 1 year after my confrontation with Eleanor, I attended an industry gala where I unexpectedly encountered Julian. He was there with his new girlfriend, a woman from a family apparently wealthy enough to satisfy Eleanor. "Clara," he said, approaching me as I stood near the bar, "you look well." "Thank you, so do you." An awkward silence stretched between us. "I've been meaning to tell you," he finally said. "You were right. To stand up to my mother and to me, we were wrong." "I appreciate that, Julian. Your company's doing amazing things. That new security platform is brilliant." "Thank you. I heard you're heading up the European division now. Congratulations." He nodded, then hesitated before adding, "She still talks about you, you know. Mom, she'll never admit it, but you're the only person who ever stood up to her and won." As he walked away, I realized I felt nothing but a calm certainty that I had escaped a life that would have slowly eroded my self-worth. Later that evening, I received an Industry Innovation Award for our new platform, standing at the podium, looking out at a room of peers who valued my work on its merits. I thought about the journey of the past year. Success isn't just about building something valuable, I said in my acceptance speech. It's about refusing to devalue yourself in the process. Sometimes, the most important business decision you'll make is walking away. Walking away from the wrong opportunity, the wrong partnership, or the wrong relationship. The lessons from the Sterling experience had transformed both my personal and professional approach. I became more discerning about partnerships, more attentive to early warning signs of power imbalances, and more confident in my own worth. My company now had an explicit ethics policy that prohibited the kind of boundary violations Eleanor had attempted. We walked away from potentially lucrative deals when they came with strings that compromised our values. Most importantly, I had learned that true strength often lies not in fighting hardest, but in knowing when to walk away. The $200,000 dowry would have been financially manageable, but the cost to my dignity would have been incalculable. So here's my message to you. One day, the right relationship and the right business partnerships will value you not for what you can pay, but for who you are and what you bring to the table. Never settle for less than the respect you deserve. Have you ever had to walk away from a relationship or business opportunity that came with unacceptable conditions? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story helped you recognize your own worth, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself in both personal and professional situations. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your dignity is never for sale.